Right. But Einstein was a realist, right? He was a famous realist in the sense that he was very explicit in a 1935 paper with Podolsky and Rosen, the EPR paper, where they said, if without in any way disturbing a system, I can predict with probability 1 the outcome of a measurement, then there exists in reality that element, right? That value, and we now know from quantum theory that's false. That Einstein's idea of local realism is strictly speaking false.
Yeah.
And so we can predict, we can set up in quantum theory, you can set up, and there's a paper by Chris Fuchs, Quantum Bayesianism, where he scouts this out. It was done by other people, but he gives a good presentation of this, where they have a sequence of something like 9 different quantum measurements that you can make. And you can predict with probability 1 what a particular outcome will be, but you can actually prove that it's impossible that the value existed before you made the measurement.
Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 386. Hope you're amazing, as always. And you probably gathered by today's little start of this episode that, we're going deep today. We're going heady today. This might not be the episode for you if you can't think at that level, but if you can question reality, if you can understand that what you're living in is a holographic bubble, then hey, this could be a cool episode for you. I love doing this type of thinking. It's not philosophical, though it is philosophical. It's science, but it's also not science, right? It's questioning your existence and what you're seeing in front of you. Is that really the reality? Is that the truth? Or are you not seeing so much around you that is existing? Are you living in a bubble of experience that, well, isn't what you want? But you know, when your emotion changes, your focus changes, then suddenly the world gets a little brighter. But what's that about? We're going to jump into all of that today. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're in sales, whatever you're doing, then this is how you got to be thinking about your life, because it's how we make radical shifts in reality. We make radical results by changing your perception. I told you it was going to be heady. I told you it was going to be heady today. But I really hope your life is beautiful. It's if you hear some noises in the background, I'm kind of living on a resort right now. And well, I've moved to a resort. It's really cool. I didn't think I'd want to be around so many people, but when you've got beautiful pools downstairs and it's all around trees and it's epic and the sun's shining, it kind of makes you want to, live this type of life. And it's wild to think back. We just had the 2 million downloads, which was crazy. And the same month, I'd been away 20 years and from the UK, Liverpool. And it's wild to look back, man, of how I used to see the world going back 20 years ago and how I see the world now. And I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped about what's next. I really am. I'm pumped to see where I'm going to be in 20 years from today. Hopefully alive, hopefully healthy, hopefully happy, right? That's the goal. And hopefully it's your goal too. But I want to see how I see the world, because it's wild, man. When I go back to the UK, Liverpool, there's so many people who still think they haven't really advanced, and maybe advanced is a critical, egotistical term, but maybe it's not, right? Maybe it's not, man. They're still thinking as they did. They're still limiting themselves, still holding themselves back, and it's always heartbreaking for me, because business is a direct reflection of where we are in our own growth. And so as we've launched the Unfair Advantage Academy and unfairadvantage.online, It's wild. Because one of the things that I'm doing in there, or the main thing I'm doing there is expansion. Because I'm only working with people who are really awesome. You know, if you're already awesome, then you know, doubling your closing percentage or doubling your income in 180 days, I'm not going to teach you how to sell. Does that make sense? What I'm going to show you how to do is to control your emotions, build new patterns of behaviors, be able to step into flow and peak states consistently. And we're going to add all the Jedi mind tricks on top of all the NLP skills to your toolbox for sure. But really, what I'm doing is changing perception, expanding possibilities, and then holding you accountable to that new version of you as we build the neural nets, or we build the brain patterns, so that becomes an automatic you. If you don't understand that, rewind it, have another little listen, rewind it again until you get it. Because that's what we do. That's what life is. Think about it like this. A billionaire didn't start out as a billionaire. Well, maybe they did. You know, some people do, but most people don't. They grow and become it. And there's levels. It's like a computer game, right? There's levels. Sometimes to get to the next level, you've got to go and fight the big boss, right? You've got to fight the baddie that is ruling that level. And often inside of us, that is fear. That's limiting behaviors. That's outdated patterns, that's limiting or old belief systems around money or teams, or deleting past mistakes so you can then get that growth lesson and then wire it into your future. So we're always in constant expansion. And if you understand that, then what the cool thing is about life is every single thing that you're experiencing becomes a reflection, or like a dip test in the car with the oil, you know what I mean? It's like it becomes a constant observation of your own growth. I'm hoping this makes sense, right? I'm trying to be as clear as I can, but the consciousness, that's a different topic. We'll talk about that in the episode, but I just want you to kind of be open to who you were. It's not who you are now, and it's not who you're going to be in the future. And that requires a lot of growth, massive growth. And what does growth mean? Growth means seeing the world differently. That's it. If you see the world differently and understand that, you can design it any which way you want to, and including the results that you want to get from each just from each moment of the day, from the next deal that you're going to get closed, from everything, man. That's when you can understand that you can literally train your brain, which means then we're kind of training our reality. Then we have to level up to that new reality in action, and that creates new results. Yeah, that's it. And there's infinite possibility. So anyway, let's get into the episode, Hey, if you want to double your sales closing, you want to double your income, and you are in a real estate, you are an insurance agent, you are an entrepreneur doing your own closing of deals, and you want to be able to do it in 180 days or less without burnout, without the emotional roller coaster, right? And instead, make it a long-lasting career, millions of dollars, and freedom, well, I got a home for you. Head over to unfairadvantage.online and go check it out. You also get the Brain Hack Pack free. It's got 3 awesome tools that you can use just for taking a look at the page and seeing if it's for you. Sound good? Beautiful. Unfairadvantage.online. Boom. Let's do this, and I will see you at the end of the show.
Is there interesting quirks? Nietzsche with his, if you gaze long into the abyss gazes into you. How's these ideas change you as a person?
It's been very, very difficult. This stuff is not just abstract theory building because it's about us. Sometimes I realize that there's this big division. I mean, my mind is doing all this science and coming up with these conclusions, and the rest of me is not integrating. It's just like, I don't believe it. I just don't believe this. I mean, it seems so. As I start to take it seriously, I get scared myself. It's like, but it's very much. Then I read these spiritual traditions and realize they're saying very, very similar things. It's like there's a lot of convergence. So for me, I have the first time I thought it might be possible that we're not seeing the truth was in 1986. It was from some mathematics we were doing. And when that hit me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had to sit down. It was scary. It was really a shock to the system. And then to realize that everything that has been important to me, like, getting a house, getting a car, getting a reputation, and so forth. Well, that car is just like the car I see in the virtual reality. It's there when you perceive it, and it's not there. So the whole question of, what am I doing and why? What's worthwhile doing in life? Clearly, getting a big house and getting a big car. I mean, we all knew that we were going to die. So we tend not to know that. We tend to hide it, especially when we're young. Before age 30, we don't believe we're going to die. But
yeah, we factually maybe know that you kind of are supposed to, yeah.
But they'll figure something out, and
Yeah.
we'll be the generation that is the first one that doesn't have to die.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. But when you really face the fact that you're going to die.
Okay, crew, let me jump in there. That's a heck of a moment to pause, right? But you know what? I love what he said. And the guy's obviously a scientific genius and a quantum theorist. Theorist? You got it. You know what I mean. It's absolutely true, because when you're young, think about when you're younger. I was crazy. I don't know about you, but I was wild. You know what I mean? I think I'm still a little bit that way, but not like I was when I was younger. Reckless, kind of reckless, but it's I just travel where I want, do what I want, and growing up was martial arts and fighting. So it was, you just didn't care about getting hit. You didn't care about getting kicked in the head. You didn't care. You just go into battle, right? You didn't care about injuries. Injuries were just whatever. You didn't think about the consequences. Now, if we extend that out as you get older, there's more experience, more wisdom, which means you've also got more to lose, or what you perceive as loss, right? But what my point is, why I wanted to interrupt, is if we understand that we're going to die, and you are, probably. Hey, Jeff Bezos on a mission not to, right? Ray Kurzweil too. But most of us probably gonna die. It's not a bad thing. Depends on your belief. For me, death is just letting go of the human body, right? That's all it is. Our consciousness, if you want to call it that, or consciousness, or our soul, or who we are, whatever your words you're happy with, make you content. But whatever it is, I just believe we continue in whatever format that is that I don't understand yet. But I don't understand what's going to happen tomorrow either. I don't understand what's going to happen in a year, 10 years, 20 years. I have no clue, right? So it is the unknown. But most people don't embrace that. In different cultures, it's funny because they treat death very differently. It's like a celebration of moving on to the next stage of existence. But for the Western world, if we want to call it that, it's like this big mourning. Oh no, someone's died. Yeah, it is sad for us, but maybe they were in chronic pain and now they're happy, right? Or maybe they don't exist anymore, depending on your belief. But either way, life's finite. So I say this, right? Not meaning to freak you out. I mean, you keep calm, just again, change perspective. If that's the case, I got to ask this question. I'm going to swear. Why the fuck are you doing what you're doing? Right? Think about that. Why are you taking all that stress and that pressure? Do you really want that house, that car? It was interesting. I was listening to a little clip by Alex Hormozy, and we've played a lot of clips. I've broke down a lot of clips on the show. Obviously, if you're a regular listener. If you're not, come on. You should be a regular listener. And he was talking about, he bought all the big houses and cars and everything else. And then he was like, very, very quickly, within weeks, they're like, why have we got this house? I don't want to deal with the gardeners and the pool cleaners and this and that. And he's worth like 100 million. And he's like, yeah, we've got a 3,000 square foot lockup that we just close and do what we want. And it's kind of like that, man. We had a big place in Latin America, big place, and it just becomes a pain in the ass. In the Caribbean, we had a big place, and it just becomes a pain in the ass, you know? And I'm the one who wanted the bling. My girl's like, nah, I don't want to deal with it. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. And then you live in it, and you're like, it's not awesome. I've left something in the other room, and now I've got to walk, like, for 2 minutes and go and get this thing that I left in the other room. I like smaller places these days. The place I'm here in this resort, it's big. I'm not saying it's not that, but it's not huge. And it really makes me happy. And because the truth is, what do we need? It's like we're taught that the more money you get, the bigger house you get, the more cars you get, the bigger things you get. But why? 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 It doesn't make any sense. So if you're stressing over making sure that you can keep that car payment, well, what would happen if you got rid of that car? Well, people wouldn't perceive me as the way I am. Well, does it matter? Yeah, but that affects my job and my income. Are you sure? When you look at Mark Zuckerberg and like Bill Gates, and they're wearing like clothes that no one even cares about, and then you've got poor people or lower socioeconomic or lower income, right? What does that mean? It means that they're wearing all the bling. And I remember when I was insecure, well, I was a little insecure, right? You know, but when I was really insecure, when I first left I was going to New Zealand from Australia, and I just left the UK. And this was all over like a year or so period. I was in the UK. UK is very into labels and brands. Really into it. Well, I was anyway. And everything was Armani. And I couldn't afford what I was wearing. We're talking, just silly, right? I was wearing expensive clothes. Thought that made me special. Or it gave me external validation to make myself feel good, right? And that's really the truth. And then Australia, I worked in Armani, right? In the middle of Sydney. And then I went to New Zealand, and after a year or so living in New Zealand, I remember being in, I think it was a bar, and someone had a t-shirt on, and this t-shirt cost like $10, and everyone was like, yeah, that's a really cool t-shirt. I was probably in $1,000 worth of clothes, probably more, and no one said anything. So it was like, what am I doing this for? These days I don't care. I've got some designer stuff. Of course I like it, but I don't really care. Does it look good? Is it comfy? Done, right? And so we have to look at our motivation and what I call a driver to why we are acquiring or attaining these things, because it's not real. Do you get that? And I know if you're on this listening to this podcast, you're a free thinker, you're outside of the box thinker. I get it. You must be, because if you're not, then this is definitely the wrong podcast. But if you are, then it's a case of don't be trapped by society. Don't be trapped by the dogma of society. Don't be trapped by the beliefs of a machine that are telling you what to do. Because you can do what the hell you want. That's the truth. It's your life. If you want to make money and go and then live on a beach somewhere and just be content and be out of society, and you don't have all this shiny stuff or a big house, is that wrong? No, it's right, because you want to do it. So when you start to understand that your way is the right way, there is no way that is the right way, your way is the right way, then do what you want. And when we understand that death is a real thing and this computer game that we're living in has an ending and we don't know when that is. Stephen Hawking's perception of time is very, very different from what most people understand. Let me explain. What he teaches, or his perception or his understanding, was that people think that a 19-year-old has all the time in the world. They got the rest of their life in front of them, right? And a 90-year-old has, they're at the end of their life. They're going to go any day now. But it's not true. That 19-year-old could go the next day. That 90-year-old could live another 20 plus years. Right? So it's only our perception of time. Time is not real. Time is not linear. It is just a perception. So when we can get our head around that, this is what I'm saying, man. It's a lot of growth, right? To even understand what that means, not just words. Oh, yeah, I get that. No, you don't get that. But do you really get that? Because if you get that, you probably wouldn't be doing what you think you're going to be doing, right? Do you need that stuff? I am not saying not to get it. Shiny stuff's awesome. I love it. But is it causing the wrong emotion? Is it giving you the wrong feeling? Is it giving you what you don't really want? Or is it not giving you what you expected?
And then when I start to look at it from this point of view, that, well, this thing was an interface to begin with. So what I'm really going to be doing, just taking off a headset. So I've been playing in a virtual reality game all day, and I got lost in the game, and I was fighting over a Porsche. And I shot some guys up, and I punctured their tires, and I got the Porsche. Now I take the headset off, and what was that for? Nothing. It was a data structure, and the data structure is gone. So all of the wars, the fighting, and the reputations, and all this stuff, where it's just a headset. So now, so my theory says that intellectually, my mind, my emotions rebel all over the place. It's like and so I have to meditate. I meditate a lot.
What percent of the day would you say you spend as a physicalist, sort of living life, pretending your car matters, your reputation matters? Like how much, what's that Tom Waits song? I like my town with a little drop of poison. How much poison do you allow yourself to have?
I think my default mode is physicalist.
Right.
I think that's just the default. I when I'm not being conscious, consciously attentive, then
intellectually consciously attentive. Because if you're tasting coffee and not thinking, or drinking, or just taking in the sunset, you're not being intellectual. But you're still experiencing it.
Right.
So it's when you turn on the introspective machine, that's when you can start
and turn off the thinker. When I actually just start looking without thinking.
Huh.
So that's when I feel like all of a sudden I'm starting to see through. It's sort of like, okay, part of the addiction to the interface is all the stories I'm telling about it. It's really important for me to get that. Really important to do that. So I'm telling all these stories, and so I'm all wrapped up. Almost all of the mind stuff that's going on in my head is about attachment to the interface. And so what I found is that essentially the only way to really detach from the interface is to literally let go of thoughts altogether. And then all of a sudden, even my identity, my whole history, my name, my education, and all this stuff is almost irrelevant, because it's just now here is the present moment.
I love that he's calling it the interface, right? The interface meaning our neurology, our patterns, our behavior, right? This this chemical addiction that we have in our brain, that to the need for more, or even like a filter in our brain that sees the world a certain way, but we're actually only processing only 134,000 bits of information from over a couple of million bits that are all around us, and we're doing this every single second. Right? So when we start to understand that, we got to understand what we're seeing or experiencing, what we think is really fucking real is not real. It's not. And when you can understand that, and I mean not get it, I get the words, understand that, everything changes. And so when he talks about meditation is beautiful. I do it every day, and I have to, because I want to change my nervous system to the correct nervous system, and I want to switch on the neurology. But more like that's the second step. But the first step is meditation. And so what that means is the meditation allows me to separate from these programs, to feel calm, to enter outside, to drop out of your head and into your chest, your body, to switch off that noise. Does that make sense? That's why it's so important, because these thoughts that are bouncing around your head, those thoughts, they're not real. They're not. Now, I believe intuition's real. I believe those things are real, but I don't believe the thoughts in your heads are real. I don't believe those things that you're still flipping around in your brain from 10 years ago are real, because they're not. They happened at the time, and they happened inside of your perception of that moment. The hell? I told you this was going to be a heady episode. I told you this. But if there was 5 people sitting at a table having dinner, every one of them is going to remember that experience a different way, because they're seeing it through a different world. Does that make sense? So people are going to remember like the waiter, the waitress, the food, the taste, the smells, the cold, the temperature, how they felt, their health, right? There's so many different versions of reality. So we always have to ask the question, what version of reality are you living in? And what version do you know you should be? Or what version of reality is the truth to how you want to experience the world?
And this is the reality right now. And all of that other stuff is an interface story. But this conscious experience right now, this is the only reality as far as I can tell. The rest of it's a story. But that is, again, not my default. That is, I have to make a really conscious choice to say, okay, I know intellectually this is all an interface. I'm going to take the headset off and so forth, and then immediately sink back into the game and just be out there playing the game and get lost in it. So I'm always lost in the game unless I literally consciously choose to stop thinking.
Isn't it terrifying to acknowledge that, to look beyond the game? Isn't it?
Scares the hell out of me. It really is scary because I'm so attached. I'm attached to this body. I'm attached to the interface.
Are you ever worried about breaking your brain a bit? Meaning like it's I mean, some of these ideas, when you think about reality, even with like Einstein, just realizing, you said interface, just realizing that light, that there's a speed of light and you can't go faster than the speed of light, and like what kind of things black holes and can do with light, even that can mess with your head.
Yes.
But that's still space-time.
That's a big mess, but it's still just space-time. It's still a property of our interface. That's right.
But it's still like, even even Einstein realized that this particular thing, some of the stories we tell ourselves, is constructing interfaces that are oversimplifying the way things work. Because it's nice. The stories are nice. Stories are nice. It's just like video games. They're nice.
Right. But Einstein was a realist, right? He was a famous realist in the sense that he was very explicit in a 1935 paper with Podolsky and Rosen, the EPR paper, where they said, if without in any way disturbing a system, I can predict with probability 1 the outcome of a measurement, then there exists in reality that element, right? That value, and we now know from quantum theory that's false. That Einstein's idea of local realism is strictly speaking false.
Yeah.
And so we can predict, we can set up in quantum theory. You can set up, and there's a paper by Chris Fuchs, Quantum Bayesianism, where he scouts this out. It was done by other people, but he gives a good presentation of this, where they have a sequence of something like 9 different quantum measurements that you can make, and you can predict with probability 1 what a particular outcome will be, but you can actually prove that it's impossible that the value existed before you made the measurement. So you know with probability 1 what you're going to get, but you also know with certainty that value was not there until you made the measurement. So we know from quantum theory that the act of observation is an act of fact creation. And that is built into what I'm saying with this theory of consciousness. If consciousness is fundamental, space-time itself is an act of fact creation. It's an interface that we create, consciousness creates, plus all the objects in it. So local realism is not true. Quantum theory is established that. Also, non-contextual realism is not true. And that it fits in perfectly with this idea that consciousness is fundamental. These exist as data structures when we create them. As Chris Fuchs says, the act of observation is an act of fact creation. But I must say, on a personal level, I'm having to spend a couple hours a day just sitting in meditation on this and facing the rebellion in me that goes to the core. It feels like it goes to the core of my being, rebelling against these ideas. So here it's very, very interesting for me to look at this, because here I'm a scientist and I'm a person. The science is really clear. Local realism is false. Non-contextual realism is false. Space-time is doomed. It's very, very clear. It couldn't be clearer.
Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what that means? Right? To put it in my layman terms, it means that we are living in infinite possibility, right? There is no predictable anything, right? It's local. It's not local, right? Local means it's here. We are attached to it. Non-local means that it is somewhere else, right? So that means it's also called something called superpositioning. Superpositioning, where infinite dimensions being played out simultaneously right now until we have the conscious focus to collapse one of these possibilities into our reality, right? So when we start to understand that, it's mind-blowing. Again, oh yeah, they're nice words. No, get this shit, man. Get it in your head. Understand that you can expand into infinite possibility. You can be that billionaire. You can create that next deal. You can move away from this shitty situation that you found yourself in. You can create a different reality. But if we keep focusing and building the behaviors and thoughts about what we don't want, or the situation that you're in is so terrible, it's 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 so terrible. If I keep repeating that words, where's your focus go? What's your emotion do, right? What do you start focusing on or thinking about in your own life? That's just me saying 5 words. So when we can understand that there is truly possibility that lies in our imagination, and then we start moving towards it, as long as we expand, as long as we grow, as long as we train our brain, as long as we take massive action, those things are real. They're real, man. We can move as fast as we're able to allow ourselves to move. It's true. And I'm not talking about Usain Bolt running. I don't mean that. Although maybe. But what I'm talking about is you changing your life, changing your income, doubling your closing percentage, whatever it is that you want to do. It's possible if you level up to the next stage.
And my emotions rebel left and right. When I sit there and say, okay, I am not something in space and time. Something inside of me says, you're crazy. Of course you are. And I'm completely attached to it. I'm completely attached to all this stuff. I'm attached to my body. I'm attached to the headset. I'm attached to my car, attached to people. I'm attached to all of it. And yet I know as an absolute fact, I'm going to walk away from all of it. I'm going to die. In fact, I almost died last year. COVID almost killed me. I sent a goodbye text to my wife. So I thought I was.
You
done.
really did.
I sent her a goodbye. I was in the emergency room, and it had attacked my heart, and it had been at 190 beats per minute for 36 hours. I couldn't last much longer. I knew they couldn't stop it. So
that was it.
So that was it. So I texted her goodbye from the emergency room.
I love you, goodbye, kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that was it. So
were you afraid?
Yeah, it scares the hell out of you, right? But there was. You're just feeling so bad anyway that all that sort of you're scared, but you're just feeling so bad that in some sense you just want it to stop anyway. Yeah. So I've been there and faced it just a year ago.
How did that change you, by the way? Having this intellectual reality that's so challenging that you meditate on, it's just an interface, and one of the hardest things to come to terms with is that means that it's going to end. How did that change you, having come so close to the reality of it? It's not just an intellectual reality; it's a reality of death.
It's forced. I've meditated for 20 years now. And I would say averaging 3 or 4 hours a day. But it's put a new urgency, but urgency is not the right word, because it's riveted my attention. I'll put it that way. It's really riveted my attention, and I spent a lot more time looking at what spiritual traditions say. By the way, again, not taking it with take it all with a grain of salt. But on the other hand, I think it's stupid for me to ignore it. So I try to listen to the best ideas and to sort out nonsense from, and it's just, we all have to do it for ourselves, right? It's not easy. So what makes sense, and I have the advantage of some science, so I can look at what science says and try to compare with spiritual tradition. I try to sort it out for myself. But then I also look and realize that there's another aspect to me, which is this whole emotional aspect. I seem to be wired up, as evolutionary psychology says I'm wired up, right? All these defensive mechanisms, I'm inclined to lie if I need to. I'm inclined to be angry, to protect myself, to have an in-group and an out-group, to try to make my reputation as big as possible, to try to demean the out-group. There's all these things that evolutionary psychology is spot on. It's really brilliant about the human condition. And yet I think evolution, as I said, evolutionary theory is a projection of a deeper theory where there may be no competition. So I'm in this very interesting position where I feel like, okay, according to my own theory, I'm consciousness. And maybe this is what it means for consciousness to wake up. It's not easy. It's almost like I feel like I have real skin in the game. It really is scary. I really was scared when I was about to die. It really was hard to say goodbye to my wife. It really pained. And to then look at that and then look at the fact that I'm going to walk away from this anyway, and it's just an interface. So it's trying to put all this stuff together and really grok it, so to speak, not just intellectually, but grok it at an emotional
Yeah,
level.
what are you afraid of, you silly evolved organism that's gotten way too attached to the interface? What are you really afraid of?
That's right.
Is there
Very personal. It's very, very personal.
yeah.
It's kind of like, have you seen the movie Ready Player Now? Ready Player Go? Ready Player One. That's it, man. Steven Spielberg one. I think that's what's going to happen in the future for sure, right? If you haven't seen it, it's an interesting concept. The movie's good. It's not great, but well, for me anyway. But I really think that's what's going to happen. People are just living in VR, completely VR. They wake up in the morning, they earn money in VR, their life's in VR. They live a different reality in VR. Well, they become addicted to being in VR. Their life is better in VR than it is in reality, right? So I think that's possibly what's going to happen to a lot of people. But if we look at life and death the same way, when you're in VR, it's like you're immersed in it, all your senses in it. It's like they'll get there where they'll trick you with smells and tastes with Neuralink by Elon and things like that in the future, I am sure. But it tricks. You've seen these videos of people falling over and screaming because they've got like the brains being tricked by VR, Oculus. It's wild. Well, what would happen if we could understand that was the same way with life? Would we really be afraid if we had that perspective? No. So I'm going to wrap this up for you because this was a heady episode for you today, The truth is, you can do whatever you want. If you want that $1 million, go and get that $1 million. But believe you can train your brain, train your nervous system, train the images, take the action step by step, and it will happen, right? Nothing just happens instantly. It doesn't work like that. It's not like winning the lottery, right? You do that, get that. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes it might, but for most, it does not. And there's nearly 8 billion people in the world right now. Think about that, nearly 8 billion. And every one of them is living in a unique bubble of reality. They're living their own life. No one sees the world the same way. Everything is two perspectives or different perspectives, like snowflakes. And I want you to know that you can do this. I want you to know that you can get whatever you want. I want you to know that you can build that business. I want you to know that you can come back from wherever you are. I want you to know that you can close that next deal. I want you to know that you can earn millions of dollars. You can live in freedom. You can do whatever you want. But there's stepping stones to get there, and there is roadmaps to get there. Okay? So that's it. The end of episode 386. Hope you enjoyed it. Probably want a little listen again. Probably want to share this with somebody today. And make sure that you are, heading to the show notes. Yes, all the links are in the show notes. Head to the show notes and do what? Well, click on whatever link you want. But click on unfairadvantage.online. Get your free gifts. See what's going on. And it might be a beautiful fit for you to double your closing percentage in income in the next 180 days. I'm here for you. I want it just as much as you. Let's go and get this. And that's it. So until the next time, have an amazing week. Keep kicking ass and much love. And one more thing. Why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.